Harris Playground.
Hooray!
This is the Deron Harris Podcast. Here's your host, Deron Harris.
Hey folks, what's up? Welcome back to the show. I'm your host, Deron Harris, and this is my podcast. Welcome, man. Thank you for joining me. I appreciate you. I really, really do. How's your mental health this week? Hopefully it is good. I want to let you know that if you are feeling challenged in any way, there's always help that you can go out and seek. My mental health this week is really, really good. Some good events happened. I just dropped my younger son off, which I don't see him very often, but earlier in the week, I had an opportunity to spend time with both my children at the same time. Not all four of us, my wife's two kids, but my two kids, my two sons, which they don't know. They have different mothers and they don't really know each other. And I had an opportunity this week to share some time with both of them at the same time. And that really did wonders for my mental health. My mood has been up. I am very, very thankful. I am appreciative. And I guess that explains the good mood that I'm in today. Today, I am talking about children. I will be talking about children on today's show. And the reason I'm talking about children is because I saw a post on social media, and this girl was pretty upset about it. She asked the question, why do white families adopt black children? And first I kind of was like, that's bullshit, but I had to actually consider what she said. And the white guy who fielded the question, he had good intentions, definitely had good intentions. And definitely, he said some positive things, but he also kind of brushed over some negative things that are the responsibility, not necessarily the responsibility of the parties involved or the families involved, but more the responsibility and the fault of the government. But I wanted to kind of ask that question myself, and I got a little curious. And why do white families adopt black children? There are many different reasons that. First of all, let me say this. What difference does it make? And that's genuinely how I feel. But that is conditional. That's with condition. Now, I don't give a shit if you adopt black children, white children, green children, yellow children. I don't care. As long as your heart is where it needs to be when adopting children. As long as this child being of a particular race or as long as it does not hinder with this child getting actual love and a family atmosphere. I have no problem with that whatsoever. I don't care what race you are, as long as you are showing love and sharing love with a child. Hats off to you, and you have my 110 millionth % support. You really do. And I commend people who do these things. But on the other side of that, there are some people who don't do it for those reasons. They do it for completely selfish reasons, and I don't appreciate it. I think it's extremely insensitive. I think it's racist. I think that you need to seek some help. And I think you need to have some education. You need to be more educated. Either way you slice it, whether it be, I don't care who it is. Adoption is super complex anyway. It's got many factors to it that nobody can really see. It's an entity with a bunch of moving parts. The motivation that people have to adopt children of color, that's a big deal. That's something that you have to sit down and really have a conversation with your family about. It's not something that you can choose willy-nilly, because there's going to be a specific set of challenges that you may not be necessarily willing or wanting or ready to deal with when raising a child of color. Not saying that you shouldn't, again, if the intention is right. But I think that it's a lot to it. I think that there's a lot to it, and like I said a moment ago, I want to commend those who have taken this on. I mean, you really have to have a desire really to provide a loving home. There are a lot of adoptive parents out there that are motivated simply by just wanting to provide a stable and loving home for a child in need, regardless of their race. Some families might have like personal connections to black communities or like a strong sense of social justice that motivates them to adopt a black child. A lot of cases, there are many more black children that might be available for adoption, as unfortunate as that may be, But I mean, the foster care system, I mean, I ain't making no bones about it. It is. It's a lot of black children in the system. But some of these families want to offer these children an opportunity to have a better life, and I can't really be mad at that. A lot of white families want to embrace and celebrate diversity. They are really down with that. I mean, I can't tell you how many, I'm down with Kamala, every day down with Kamala, whatever, just because they themselves want to see past all of this racial bullshit, and they want to give a child, an opportunity to, and them as well, to build a multicultural family. It's a great idea. Some parents, they might feel like a sense of, responsibility to address systemic inequities, which is I can't be mad at that. They want to provide opportunities like for children who face discrimination. That's man, I cannot be upset with that. I can't, man. It really is a noble thing that a lot of these people do when they shoulder up this responsibility. I mean, especially like black boys, like a couple of dudes, man. Come on now. I mean, that's a large mountain to climb, and the fact that some of these families they take it on because they have the means to. Even some of them take it on, even if they don't have the full means. They stretch out and they make a way for these kids. I mean, I cannot be upset with that. I just can't be. Oh, you're advocating for white families to be adopted. Listen, I'm advocating for children to be taken out of the system and be given to loving families who need children. That's that simple. Okay, it's not about. It really, I mean, it is, but it is not about a race thing. It is more about the child. It's about the children and the need of the child. And that's why, for me, what difference does it make? As long as it's based in sincerity. And that's all I really want to say about that. Well, it's not all I want to say about it, because that's what this topic of the podcast is about today. So I got plenty more to say about it, but I'm going to take a break really fast. And when I come back, we're going to get into the pros and cons that some of these families may face when adopting black children. I'm Deron Harris, and this is my podcast. I'll be right back.
One of the things that makes life so fun is that we all have different interests. The Delightfully Different podcast explores people who live life differently. I'm your host, Lexi Papadopoulos, an award-winning radio veteran. Whether it's a career, hobby, lifestyle, or kink, let's discuss it in a non-judgmental way. Some interviews include a furry, a drag king, a mermaid, and an animal communicator. Coming up, I'll speak with a shaman who has psychedelic retreats in Peru and paranormal investigators. Learn about lifestyles you never knew existed with the Delightfully Different podcast.
Now, back to the Deron Harris Podcast.
Hey, folks, what's up? Welcome back to the show. I'm Deron. It's my show, man. And today I'm talking about white families adopting black children. Is it cool? Is it not? How do you feel about it? I know how I feel about it. And right now, I'm going to break down some of the pros and cons of of adopting a black child. I mean, really. I mean, so what are the pros? I mean, what are the cons? If you was to put it on the scales of justice, what would it weigh out? So, I always like to kind of end on some good. So I'm going to start with the cons. What are the cons of adopting a black child for a white family? What are the challenges that you might face? Well, Cultural identity and heritage is a big thing. One of the significant challenges is ensuring that the adopted child maintains a connection to their cultural heritage and develops a strong racial identity. This requires intentional effort from the adoptive parents. And if they're not ready for this, they're going to have a difficult time. That's one thing that they're going to have an extremely difficult time with. Okay? Now, another thing is racial discrimination and bias. The adopted child may face racism and discrimination, and the family needs to be prepared to support them through these experiences. White parents may not have firsthand experience with such issues and might need to seek external resources and education, which I wholeheartedly advocate for. If you guys don't know, please get read up. If you got some black friends, listen, man, can you brush me up on what I need to know about this, because I don't want these things to affect my child in negative ways. You know what I'm saying? So community and social challenges, another thing. The child might feel isolated or different. And that's true if raised in a predominantly white community. It is important for adoptive parents to create opportunities for this child to interact with people of their own race. That is important, and for a lot of different reasons, so they don't lose their identity. I'm a black child, but I'm not a white child. I don't want to, I don't necessarily want to be a white child. You know what I'm saying? I want to maintain my identity, which you should. All children should maintain their identity of who they are, because it is very special. Even white children. All children, man. All children. Listen, nobody can control what race they're born into. People are born and they're born innocent. It is us, the adults, that create these negative stereotypes and falsities about the opposite race. So if you have a family that's willing to try and separate that can only be good for the child. And I'm on board for that. Adoptive parents' preparedness. While adoptive parents must be prepared for additional responsibilities that come with raising a black child, including understanding and addressing issues related to race and identity, they have to be willing to do it. And not something that you put up on the shelf. It's not something that I clocked out today, I'll be back tomorrow. And no, it's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. That's what these kids go through. There's a lot. There's a lot in society, especially in a situation like that, especially when they're put into a situation where they may very well be the only black child in this particular neighborhood even. That is a lot of pressure. Even at school, think about school. A lot of bullying goes on at school. There's a lot of that goes on. Those parents have to be prepared to stand behind that child and be like, you ain't talking to my child like that. For lack of a better phrase, they might have to, get a little black on folks to defend their black child and be willing to take the ridicule and the persecution they may suffer from their own race. You get what I'm saying? Are you willing to do that? Are these people willing to do that? You got to be willing to do that. And also, another one is external perceptions and criticism. The family might face external criticism and judgment from both white and black communities, which can be challenging to navigate. Hell yeah. Both are going to have something to say. Both black folks and white folks are going to have something to say about this. And you know what? I'm going to encourage the ones, especially the ones that did it for the right reasons. I'm going to encourage those people to not listen to those people. Don't listen to those people. You know what you did. You know what you did was the right thing to do. You helped a child, and you helped that child navigate through their lives. You helped that child. That child loves you like it's their parent. That child eventually will understand that I am not the same race as you. And you loved me like you loved me anyway. And that's your child. You know what I'm saying? You're that child's parent, and you're a parent to that child. And that's all that matters. As long, like I said, as long as it is from a place of love and sincerity and genuineness. That's my whole thing. You got to be able to navigate these things successfully. There are a lot of challenges. There's more than just those challenges I've just named. But you have to be prepared. You have to be in it for the long haul, because it is not an easy task. It is a super tall order, and I've said that, and I'll keep saying it. I'm going to keep saying it. If you're thinking about it, because the last thing I want is for some people to say, "Oh yeah, let's adopt a child," and have buyer's remorse, so to speak, because they don't necessarily understand the culture or necessarily want to understand the culture. You get what I'm saying? I'm going to take another break. I'll come back, and we're going to go through the pros of being adopted by a white family. I'm Deron Harris. I'll be right back.
Look for Starbucks coffee in a grocery store near you, then sit back and enjoy the exceptional taste of Starbucks at home.
Now, back to the Deron Harris Podcast.
Hey, folks, what's up? Welcome back to the show. I'm your host, Deron Harris, and I'm talking about white families adopting black children. Should they adopt these children? Should these families adopt these children? And what I'm talking about right now are the pros and the cons. And I just went through all the cons before I went to break. And now I'm going to give it to you straight. Here's some of the pros that it does provide. And starting with number one, providing a loving home. That's the first thing. That's the first order that's filled. There are so many children in this system that are they bounce around in foster care. Some of these kids are homeless. They're just children, man. And this gives them a home, a permanent home for them, a room, man. In certain cases, brothers and sisters, a place to interact. But it always gives them a loving home. The primary benefit is offering a loving, stable, and supportive environment that the child needs. Period. Point fucking blank. This will, I don't think there's any doubt that this will increase the quality of this child's life exponentially. Gives this child access to better prospects just from being adopted, not even by a white family, just from being adopted. Okay? But also, this is another thing that is a pro, diversity and cultural awareness. Adoptive families can benefit from the increased cultural awareness and diversity. Sorry about that. This can enrich the family's experience and perspectives, fostering a more inclusive environment. I love that. I've had some instances in my life where there have been some white people that I've known that were one way that had a moment of clarity and completely did a 180 and went the other way. And can I tell you, man, it's a beautiful thing. It really is. To watch somebody who had a viewpoint that was wrong, that they stood up in every day, to turn around and say, you know what, that was wrong. And I want to turn around and I want to make it right. I want to do the right thing. I want to be that person. Because in my opinion, I think everybody should thrive to be like that, even black folks. White folks, Asian folks, Indian folks, I don't care who you are, Latin folks, I don't care who you are. Everybody should strive for cultural awareness, please. We are all here. It's not just you. You know what I'm saying? Number 3 is access to resources. I hate to say it, but, the racial wealth gap is a real thing. White families make more money than black families. They just do. They just do. And as unfortunate as it is, it's a reality that we live with in this country. But some of these parents have access to incredible resources that they now have opened this child up to. This child now has these opportunities in education and healthcare, which that's a great thing, even if it's just one child. You know what I mean? And for somebody to do that and recognize that, God bless them. That's all I really got to say. I mean, that's one of the noblest things that you can do, is open that door to understand your privilege and then share it. That's a great thing. I think that is one of the something that should be honored at the highest order. I really do. You break down racial barriers. Transracial adoption can help break down racial barriers and stereotypes, promoting greater understanding and acceptance among different racial groups, and that is a fact. It really can. And by the way, folks, these are things that I've prepared and I've written down. That's why it sounds like I'm reading, because I am. And lastly, advocacy and social justice. Families that adopt transracially often become advocates for social justice and racial equity, contributing to this broader societal change. Yeah, I'm absolutely reading, but you get what I'm saying. These people have taken it upon themselves to advocate for social justice, which is what our society needs. We don't need to be separated. We don't need to be under a divisive rule. We don't need like I said, I don't want to make this a political post, but we need more social justice. And if we have more white families that are willing to stand up against this social justice, we have a better chance of making sure that everyone in this country enjoys the same freedoms and the same advantages across the board. And that's what ultimately we strive for. And thank you again to these families who provide that to these children. Okay? I want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart. But there's a lot of things that don't line up, because it really is important to acknowledge some of the motivations that some of these people have that can be, less than savory, let's say. People have selfish reasons for doing these things. I'm not sure if you heard about it. Not too long ago, there was a family, I think it was in West Virginia, if I'm not mistaken, that there was like 3 black children they found that were being held as slaves, modern-day slaves, by a white family. They had been holding these children for years, locking them away in a barn. This just recently happened, a few months back. So I can understand where people are concerned, where people can become concerned about these children and whether or not they're receiving adequate care, fair treatment, all the things that these parents promised that they would provide to these children. Are these people motivated in a different way? Do they have a different motivation behind wanting to adopt these black children? One of these things is the savior complex. It's a real thing. Some of these people think that adopting black children, they fulfill this, this savior or hero, or this personal validation or praise that or like some sort of like perceived benevolence. I don't know. This I saved you from being who these people are. That shit is very real. You don't have to worry about growing up around black people. Well, I happen to like black people. I'm black. Now, there's a lot of selfish reasons. Social image is another one. Adoption can be seen as a way to enhance one's social image or status. For some, adopting black children might be seen as trendy or progressive. They might even pursue it to gain social approval or admiration. You despicable, disgusting motherfucker, you. And if that's you out here listening to this podcast, you know who I'm talking about. And you feel it in your fucking bones too, don't you? Don't you? Because you know that you're not sincere about it. And shame on your motherfucking ass. Shame on your whole motherfucking ass. You should be. Anyway, let's move along. This is a fucked up reason too, avoiding domestic competition. In some cases, prospective parents might run into transracial adoption because they perceive it to be quicker or easier than adopting white children domestically, avoiding competition and long waiting lists. So some of these parents are just adopting children just because they don't want to wait for a white child. I just want to adopt this child because we just want a child. We need a child. We need to have a child. We want something to love on, which, okay. But at the same time, are you doing it for the right reasons? Are you going to want to go through all those things that I mentioned in the previous segments? Are you going to want to go through any of those pros and cons? Any of those cons? What are you going to, are you just going to give the fuck up? All right. I think I'm done with this. Can we trade this in? Is it going to be one of those? You know what I'm saying? Another one is exoticism. Some people might be drawn to the idea of a racial child or biracial, like raising a child from a different background due to fascination or fetishization of cultures, like just obsessed with, I want to know how to do box braids. Oh, I have a child, I can do cornrows now. Or we can go to the cookout now because we have a representative. You know what I'm saying? Just some dumb shit, man. Just some dumb shit. Some people, believe it or not, people do this shit, man. They do. People do it because they want to have this charitable image. Adopting a child from a different race can sometimes be viewed as a charitable act. You did a great thing by pulling this child up out of the ghettos of the world. You sparkling white person, you. You know what I'm saying? Some people might. There's people that brag about it. Well, I adopted a black child. That gives me validation. Look at me. I really did that. They do that. I definitely advocate for the black culture. I'm not a racist. I adopted black children. Look at me, just to get that validation, which is silly. And number 6 is emotional fulfillment. While the desire to provide a loving home is generally positive, in some cases, individuals might adopt to fulfill a personal void or address their own emotional needs without fully considering the long-term responsibilities and challenges involved in transracial adoption. I understand that your intentions are honest. I do, but you have to make sure that this is for you. This is something that's for you, because a lot of people, they think it is, and then all of a sudden it's not. And it's unfortunate for the children, because a lot of times they end up going back into the system. It's just unfortunate. So be sure. It's crazy, folks. I think that the people who have the hang up with children being adopted is ridiculous. The people who have the hang up with children finding a loving home is ridiculous. I think that people should learn to accept the fact that a lot of people really genuinely want to help children. They really genuinely don't care about race. They just want to see that this child has a better shake than everybody else. Has a better shake than they would have gotten sitting here in the system. I didn't mean to say better than everybody else, but you know what I mean, sitting here in the system. I'm sure a lot of children would love to have, a home that they could, sit down and tell their parents how school was today and eat hot meals and have friends that they don't have to worry about leaving. Having somebody to love them, man. I'm sure every child would just love that. I'm sure every child absolutely needs that. And if there are more families out there that are able to provide this level of love for all the right reasons, then I 100% am down for you, man. I'm down for you and your family, and God bless you. So I don't want to babble on. I think this is going to do it for this week's episode of the Deron Harris Podcast. Remember, this helps a child's mental stability. It really does. It really does. And the people that adopt these children, you know, the people that they deserve some respect. You know, I don't really know exactly how to articulate it because it's just a huge thing that they've taken on. And, you know, I think that if you are a black person and you know people in this situation, you know, I think that your insight may be very, very important to them. I think your friendship may be extremely important to them. And God bless you, too, for having that same open mind and saying that it doesn't matter as long as the child has love. So I want to thank my parents for having me, man. I mean, I wasn't adopted, but I want to thank my parents because I know how important it is to have parents. I know how important it is to be around my kids. You know, I really do, and it's the greatest feeling in the world. There are some people that will never be able to have kids, but this is one way that they can fulfill the dreams of a child and their dreams at the same time. And it really does not matter what race you are. I want to thank my wife also because she's just amazing. She's one of the ones who put me up to this topic. I talked about it with her today. And, you know, she's an advocate for it as well. And I want to thank my producer. I talked with him about it. He was the first person I really kind of went over with it. But I want to thank you, man. I appreciate you chopping it up with me about it. I want to thank you, Gentry Thomas, and happy birthday to you, bruh. I want to thank you for letting me have my platform to I guess to put my content out for folks, man. And if you're enjoying my content, I do appreciate you. And I thank you very much for joining me every week. And I hope to give you better content in the future. I'm going to keep getting better. I'm going to keep digging at it. But in the meantime, I'm going to get out of this hot box. I'm Deron Harris, and this has been the Deron Harris Podcast. I'll see you guys next week. Peace.
You've been listening to the Deron Harris Podcast. Subscribe to the show, give a good rating, and everything you need to know is at DeronHarris.com.